If you'd like to know how to make a full wrap tumbler like this, you are in the right place. I'm Chris from L3D, and I'm going to be taking you through the full process, turning it from this to this, using the OMTech M30 fiber MOPA laser engraver, and we will be using a rotary chuck today. So I'm going for the full process. If you're interested, stick around and I'll show you how. Now the process today is going to be using a stainless steel tumbler with a powder coat on it, and we are using a fiber laser, but this process works with diode lasers and it works with MOPA lasers. So what am I going to be taking you through today? We are going to be going through the full setup. So I'm going to show you how to measure your tumbler, how to get those dimensions and put them into LightBurn, how to set up a rotary in LightBurn, and then how to define your steps on your tumbler. Also how to get the right kind of engraving and to get it to look smooth, and we're going to be going through all of that today. And then finally the full engraving, the full showcase, and I'll be showing you what you can do with those tumblers when they are done. So stick around and let's have some fun. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to talk you through my setup. So as I mentioned in the beginning, I have got the OMTech Rotary here, and this one is a chuck style. It comes with a chuck key which you can put in there to open and close the jaws. And there you go, there are some details about it right there. So what else do we need for this? So today we are going to be using our OMTech M30 fiber laser. So this one is a fiber MOPA laser and it's 30 watts. However, this process will work with any kind of laser engraver. The way this chuck works is it does have a cable that runs round all the way to the back and plugs into your unit there. In my review video, which you can see in the top right now, you will see I've given you a good walkthrough of that, so you can check that out. One other thing I recommend today is if you have an old tumbler lying around, you're going to see right here, I have done a lot of testing on this, because when you're initially starting with tumblers, you need to work out your material settings, you need to work out various different things, because you'll see with my initial tests here, I had a lot of very uneven lines and the darkness wasn't great and the engravings were not coming out well. What I had to do was a lot of actual refining, and I'm going to go through that process with you, but I recommend you get your hands on an old tumbler that you don't mind wrecking basically, because this is now unusable for things, but I'll be using this in the future for any kind of testing. It's a similar color to the one we're actually going on, so the settings I worked out on this are roughly translatable. First thing we want to do is remove the top, the screw top on your tumbler. So there you go, we've got a stainless steel internal wall here, and that is going to fit onto our chuck over there, which I'll now show you how to do. Your rotary tool will come with this. This is a chuck key, and this is a chuck here, and you're going to see now there are a number of actual square cutouts that can slot into around this, and the purpose of those is that actually allows you to open and close the chuck jaw, and that chuck jaw is what we're going to be using to lock onto our tumbler. So let me give you an example. So this is a spring, so make sure when you push it in, you have to hold it because it will spring load out. You put it in and you turn it clockwise or anti-clockwise. So it's clockwise to make it smaller, as you see there, and that's going to get it closer and closer together, and then anti-clockwise to draw it apart. And the theory is you put your tumbler in there, so you make it small enough, so you go clockwise until it goes together. You position your tumbler against the back wall, so you want it to be flush. Then you push your chuck key in, and then you start tightening it until it basically grips it. We'll go through it in detail in a second, but that is the theory behind it. Regarding the actual mechanical aspect of this chuck, you'll see there are screw holes on the bottom which you can use to tie it down to your base. I haven't done it in this case, you'll see that later on. On the side there is also, if I can get the focus, an angle representative dial on the side, and that basically allows you to adjust the angle of the chuck. And the way we do that, if I show you on top here, there are two screws. This chuck came with an Allen key. The way it works is you put your Allen key into your screw, loosen it, and you're going to see there it's actually already moved. So once loosened, so that is obviously clamping down the mechanism, which puts resistance on that and stops it from moving. But if you've got a tumbler, so in this case, our tumblers are pretty much spherical the whole way through and a constant dimension. So we can put it parallel to the bed, or to the laser head, should I say, not to the bed. And that's all we have to worry about. So to do that, all we care about is having the edge of this parallel to the laser so that it can do a nice even spread. So we're just gonna literally want that set up on the 90-degree mark there. So it's literally parallel with it. However, if you had a tumbler, and I don't have any examples on me right here, if you had a tumbler that was, you know, different, a different radius throughout, or tapered, you might want to put it on an angle, because ultimately your goal is to have this parallel to this. And if your tumbler isn't actually a straight shape all the way down, that's when you need to take this and get the angle set up. And you would also use a spirit level, which we'll go on to next. Now my chuck is currently sat on the bed, and you're going to see actually when I set this up, the laser head where it is going to come down probably around here. So if I put it in that position, most of the tumbler is actually off the engraving space. So in my case, I am going to set it off of the actual bed there, you're going to see. And what we're going to do now is we're going to go through the process of actually getting the angle correct on this. So first thing we want to do is, well, first thing I will do is just tighten this off using the method I showed you a second ago, slightly, just so it holds its position, okay? I know it's not parallel at the moment, but I don't really care about that at this point. All I care about now is securing the tumbler so it's butted up against the wall in a nice tight fashion. And we're going to do that. And the way I recommend doing it is, before you actually try and tighten it, just adjust this using your both hands and until it's a tight fit. Because one thing you don't want to be doing is trying to balance the tumbler and tighten the chuck at the same time. You're just asking for something to go wrong there. So there we go. I'm just notching it out a little bit. I'm going to do it roughly until it starts to bite. There you go. I know that's biting. So I've loosened it off a bit. I've backed it off. So look, I can rotate it. I can push it in there. But what I can't do is tighten it in place yet. And we're going to do that now. So now that I know it's just going to take a little tiny rotation of tightening, I'm going to butt my tumbler up against the head there. And I'm actually going to tighten this so that it grips it. And I'm going to go really tight. And now that is really secure on there. But I did this on purpose, or did I? You'll see it's not flush here a bit. So you can see this part here isn't actually flush against the top, whereas if I rotate it, that is. So this is why it's very important to get this part right, because our tumbler would have been straight away not parallel there. So let me just loosen it off, tighten it back up, and there we go. If I now rotate it around, that is pretty much, yep, that's good. We are now butted up against the back of our chuck, which is good. Now on to the next stage, which is the leveling. One thing you'll need for this next stage is a spirit level. I've got quite a big one here, but you can get really small ones that sit on top. And what you want to do is basically sit it on top of the actual stainless steel tumbler. And if I move my camera closer to it, you can see at the moment it's quite off. So what we're going to do is, as I said earlier, we're going to adjust this until we get it actually in the position we want. So there you go. As I tip it up and down, obviously the bubble moves left and right. We're aiming to get that bubble perfectly in the center, and that's pretty good there. So what I'm going to do now is, using the small Allen key that I showed you a minute ago, I'm going to tighten those screws there, and I'll move the camera just a bit more so you can actually see me do it. We're going to tighten those screws just there to allow it to lock it in place. And we're almost there. One more rotation on this side, I think will do it. There we go. If I let go of it now, and then bring the camera back around here, what you should see is it's pretty much bang in the center there, which is exactly what we want. We now know when it comes to actually engraving our tumbler, that is going to be parallel to the laser now, which is great because it means we're going to get a nice, clean, even engraving. So let's move on to the next stage. Now, one other thing we have to do is actually focus the laser onto the top of our tumbler, because we want the laser to be in focus. My laser requires 363 millimeters from that red line there to the top surface of whatever it's engraving. I actually 3D printed this and I showed it in my review video. It's a free file from MakerWorld. I'll link it in the description. But what you can do is you can actually measure with a ruler first. So I took this ruler and measured 363 millimeters from the top to the line. Then I put this under, adjusted it until it actually went onto the top surface and touched the lens at the top, which I'll show you. And that tells me very quickly my laser is focused onto the top of that. That's crucial to do, so make sure you do that before you do anything because you want your engravings to be in focus. Here we have our LightBurn workspace, and you'll see I've got a blank canvas at the moment. I do have some designs ready to go, but I've hidden them off just to show you the initial setup. So the first thing you want to do is make sure your rotary tool is plugged into your machine, and then make sure your machine is plugged into your PC and connected. If you look down here, I am currently connected to it, which is great. The next thing we need to do is click on laser tools, and within there you're going to see a rotary setup bit. I'm going to turn that off initially, and what you're seeing here is a number of settings. So these specific settings are relative to my chuck, the OMTech chuck that I've got behind me. However, your chuck or roller, it will have different sizes here, but I'm going to explain the concept to you just so that you understand it and you know what to do yourself. So, first thing is chuck or roller. We've got a chuck, that is the lock-in mechanism and it rotates on an axis. A roller is if you've got rollers either side and it sits on top of those rollers and it spins it around. In my case, I've got reverse rotary direction because the position I've got my tumbler coming from, it is actually opposite to what this expects. So if I engrave text, it would look back to front unless I set it to reverse. I've also got return to starting point. So after you do an engraving, it returns to that origin point, which is good if you want to do a cleanup pass, which we will be doing. Moving on, the split setup and the overlap. These are two really crucial things I'm going to go to in a minute. But I had issues with this at the beginning because I didn't know what mine were and I was getting really bad results, which I will show you. Now, the steps per rotation. This is critical and this is very specific to your rotary once again. So this is how many individual steps, like a clock. Imagine a clock with seconds and minutes. Each step is a degree around a rotation of 360 degrees. Mine in particular has 12,800 individual steps to do a full 360 circle. Your rotary might be different, so check out your instruction manual that comes with it. The details will be in there, but that is here. The object diameter and circumference are interlinked. If you update one, the other gets updated, and we will be going through that next, so stay tuned for that. And then finally, you have your motor speed setting. So this is the speed of the actual chuck or the roller as you're using it. And my settings are these ones here. You're welcome to copy them. What I actually did with those settings is I tuned them using ChatGPT. That's an AI functionality website if you want to check it out. And I just got it to give me recommendations and then I fine-tuned it. I recommend doing the same if you want to try and nail that. And then finally, you've got your rotary axis. Our setting in this case is the y-axis, so the rotary is along the y-axis. So there you go, that's it. So you have these settings, you want to put them in there like that. And then what you want to do is select Enable Rotary. I'm not going to do it right now because I'm going to show you a secondary bit. I'm going to click OK. So if we move up over here, you're going to see a little square setup with a arrow going either side. That, if we click on that, it's going to take us to the same window we just had. What we're going to do there, I just wanted to make you aware of that, just in case you find that easier. But we're going to now enable rotary. And if I click test, the rotary should spin and rotate. And we can show you that in a minute, but I'm going to click OK. Once you've clicked OK, you now have a green dot next to that circle. And this is why I'm showing you, because that is crucial. If you want to engrave in LightBurn on a rotary, you have to have this mode enabled, because otherwise, when you have your design outside of the limit of the workspace, it's going to have a hissy fit and it's not going to know what to do. Whereas we're overriding it there and we're telling it, no, we're going to be engraving onto a rotary, so don't worry if our design is outside of the window. Okay, let's move on to the next bit. So you saw in the settings, it asked us for the diameter or the perimeter of our item. So there are two methods of doing this. One of them is using a tape measure like this. Personally, I always get confused doing it because when I wrap it around, I mean, this is a really cheap one. You can get much better ones. But when I wrap it around and try and tell what it is, I just get a bit confused. But I'll show you the general methodology of it. So you want to wrap it around there like that. Where it overlaps, that is your perimeter. So that's one. You can either take note of that dimension. What I personally prefer to do though is I have a pair of calipers. You can get these, you know, in varying different qualities. This is a good pair, but the cheap pairs are just as good. And I will go to the end, or the part of the tumbler that you're looking to engrave onto. I'll go to the end of it, and what I will do, if I can get a good angle on this, I will then get it so that I'll move it up and down until it meets a bit of resistance and moves out as far as possible. But that number there, 90.79, I mean, it's pretty good. You can push it tight if you want. 90.79. So that is our diameter of our tumbler. And now what we're going to do is take that dimension and plug it straight back into the software, which we'll do. Next thing I want to explain to you is split size and overlap, because I told you they were very important. And you're going to see here, here's my test tumbler that I did. And I think you should be able to see there are lots of individual lines and it just doesn't look smooth at all. It looks really jagged. And if I show you the tiger that I did yesterday, you can see all the individual lines and it's really jagged. And I was wondering what was going on there. And it turns out my split size and overlap were way too high. I ended up getting it really good and getting that, but before it was like that. Hopefully you can see. So let me explain split size to you first, okay? Imagine a loaf of bread. A split size is the slice of, or the thickness of each slice of bread. So I had a high split size, which means each line was quite thick, and it meant around the curves, because the lines are so thick, it just couldn't get a nice natural curve. The overlap is, as it says, is how much each of those slices of bread push into each other, or overlap in this case. So it will draw a line, a thick line, then it will overlap a certain amount. So if it's not very much as well, if it's a small overlap or no overlap, it's going to just draw it directly next to it. So what I had to do is I had to decrease the split size down so that each line was much thinner. But what that allows you to do is get a much smoother curve. So if you find your engravings are looking like that, where there's lots of lines and there's no good curves, look at reducing your split size. And also what I did is I actually added a slight overlap to make sure each line overlapped the other line, and then that way you get a really clean finish. I wanted to explain that to you guys because this one really stumped me for a while yesterday, but I managed to get to the bottom of it, so hopefully you can learn from my lessons. So now that we actually know what our object diameter is, we can input it in here. So I was measuring quickly. I can't remember what it exactly was, but what I've done in this case is I've rounded it down to 90.75, and I know that works for this. I know it's about the right one, but if we were to put 91, for example, you'll see the circumference actually, and I think I was referring to it as the perimeter. It is the circumference. The circumference updates. So if you did measure your circumference and it was 286, you can put it in like that, or you can actually put in the diameter. It's whatever you prefer as your method, but either way, this bit's crucial and you need to get it right. I also explained to you the split sizes. So when I originally did it and I was getting those thick lines, I think I had it set to 0.2 split size. You can see I've really decreased it to 0.03, and the overlap was on 0 for me originally. There was no overlap, whereas now it's 0.05, so there's a very fine overlap, which means you just get a nice smooth curve. So that is now good to go. We've done everything we need now to get an engraving. The next thing we actually need is a design, so let's do that. In this case, I've used a website called Creative Fabrica to get my design. It is a subscription-based website. I do pay for the subscription. I'm not affiliated, so I don't get anything for saying this to you. However, I really like this website because it has loads of vector and SVG images. In this case, we are going to search for laser tumbler wrap. It's important to put laser in there because if you just put tumbler wrap, you'll find it might bring up different types of wraps for other processes. We want them to be laser engraving friendly, so click on that. And you're going to see it has a really, really good library of tumbler wraps. And there's all sorts of different designs. As you can see, it's really, really definitive. So you can go in there and find the design you want. And you can, you know, laser engrave these to your heart's content. I've already got my design. It's a really cool bear design, which you've seen at the start of this. So we're gonna import that in now, and I'm gonna show you the next stage. Now that we have our design, the way you import it in is you will select import. So after you click import, you'll find your design, just double click it and it will open, and it will open really big. So you need to scale it down. I already have mine here and I'm gonna show you it now. This is the wrap design I ended up going with, and it's a really cool one. You've seen it on the actual tumbler at the start of the video, but you'll see it's actually outside of the workspace. And that's where I told you earlier, the critical part is having enable rotary actually selected, because it won't matter. Whereas if you didn't have that selected, you would actually get error messages telling you you're trying to engrave out of the workspace. So what I have actually done here, if I select the whole thing and then you look up to the top left of the sizes, you're going to see the height and width of this. And I have actually specifically sized this, so 285 millimeters, to coincide with what my actual circumference is. So I've tweaked this. This is different to what I originally had. So you'll see it's actually a bit bigger now. It's 285.1. But let's assume we're going with that, okay? So I've selected my image. Sometimes with these designs, by the way, they come in as separate little lines. So select the whole thing, right click and group it. I have already grouped, so we haven't got a problem here. Select your design and then just change that dimension to whatever your circumference is here. So ours is 285.1. That's the width. If you were to take your cylindrical tumbler and flatten it out, that is what number we're talking about there. So let me update this to 285.1. It's done that. And then what I will say is, if you're not sure it's in the right place, select the design and click P and it will central it. And there you go, we have our design now. We know that that is going to basically fulfill the whole diameter of that tumbler. And what we do have to check at this point, the width of it, because in this case the width is that part there. And we need to know what our machine's maximum engraving window is. Mine's 175 millimeters by 175 millimeters. So I know that that Galvo laser can confidently achieve 153 millimeter width range when it's engraving. So we're okay. So our design is now good for us to actually apply some settings. But before I do that, there is one last thing we need to do, and that is we actually need to make sure our tumbler is actually perpendicular to the laser head coming down, so that the actual engraving will be straight across it. We leveled it earlier, so we now know it is parallel to the actual laser head. However, what we need to do now is adjust this angle here, which is whether or not it's straight when the laser is coming across. We need to make sure it's going down the middle of it and not left to right in a zigzag. So to do that, I'm going to hide off this. What I would recommend doing is drawing a line. I've just put a standard line there, and I've done it almost the whole width across here. And that's it. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to frame it, and I'm going to switch back over and I'm going to show you how to do this. So you can see the line we drew out. We're actually framing it at the moment. And because of that, we can look at it from top down. And what we can do is we can work out, one, if it's central on the tumbler, and two, if it's actually going straight, because we want it straight. What we don't want is it like that, where it's clearly like not going straight down the middle. So what you can do here is you can use that line. You can manually move your position of your tumbler. There we go, I'm showing you the right way now. You can move the position of your tumbler, and you can get it approximate then. And then once we come to framing it in a minute, we can actually know we're in the right ballpark. So we've straightened it up, we're happy with it. We're now gonna turn off the output and turn off show for that line. And we are gonna set our design back up there. So the next thing we wanna do is actually specifically set the material settings. So what I would say is you can get different libraries out there. I've done my own testing, as you can see down here, and I've got a specific set of material settings that work well with my 30-watt fiber JPT laser. That's important because these settings might not work with your laser, and you might need to adjust some settings, some speed, some power. But this is what I have done. You saw on the tumbler earlier, which I will get now. You saw on this, I did a big range of testing, and from that, I then took the next tumbler, the one that I've got on there at the moment. I did some more testing, and I came up with these settings here. So the speed and power will be dependent on your laser, the frequency as well, and the Q pulse width. However, the line interval in my case, 0.025 millimeter line interval, or 1016 lines per inch, that should be translatable to your laser. I've done one pass, and I've done bi-directional fill, but no crosshatch. That's important. I found the crosshatch was messing up my design a bit, and it was looking a bit rubbish. So these settings here are probably universal, but you'll need to get your own settings there. But you're welcome to try mine. Just bear in mind you might wreck your tumbler. So as I said earlier, have a tumbler that you can practice this stuff on, that you don't mind ruining. Okay, so we have our design there. We've got it all set up. We've got it central. The next thing we want to do is actually engrave it now. So what we need to do is select start, and what will happen then is you're going to get a different screen to what you're probably used to seeing when you click start. On this, it's going to show the information we already had, the split size, the overlap, the object diameter. But it also shows at the center, and it has these settings here. I left these as run shapes in shape order. And what is important here is you can actually manually rotate your chuck or your rotary via whatever you set. So if you set 1 millimeters and then jog it, it's going to rotate it by 1 millimeter at a time to make sure you get it in the right position. If you're trying to line things up with logos, this will be really handy there. And once you get it in your start position, I recommend clicking set 0. That way you can always return to that point if you click the go to 0 button. So the next thing we want to do is frame our design, which I'm going to show you now. Now we have our design. Obviously this tumbler isn't representative of the one I'm using. The one I'm using is actually clear. But what it will do is when you click start, it will split your design up into sections, and it will frame a box. And you can see there, we can now tell if it's centrally located and as we want it. And we do in this case. If I step it forward, which I will do, so mine's been sliced into 13 individual slices. If I click next now, you're going to see it's going to demonstrate each slice of where it's going. And this is a really good way for us to work out if we've set it up and positioned it correctly. Right, so I've shown you that last bit. You know now how to position your item and make sure you're happy with it. Once you're good to go, it's literally a case of clicking the start button, and then it will engrave. So you've seen we've just done our first pass and it's come out really nice, but we want to actually shine it up a little bit now. So there's a couple of methods you can do here. You can just take it out now and try and use something. A lot of people recommend LA Awesome, which is like a cleaning solution, and that is good at kind of polishing it up. But in my personal preference in this case, based on this tumbler and this machine, I am going to do something called a cleanup pass. And that is basically a quick engraving with less power, where it just will take off the surface of whatever's left, leaving a nice shine. And to do that, we're going to select our same design. We're not going to move anything at this point. And I have already got a cleanup pass set, so I'm going to assign the settings and I'm going to show them to you again. And in this case, what I use that works really well is 1800 speed, 15% power, 65 kilohertz frequency, and 200 global width. And then this is my line interval and lines per inch again, and bidirectional fill on. And we're going to run the exact same process again. It's going to take twice the time again, so it's one of those things. You can decide if the first pass is good enough. You might be able to tweak your settings to get that first engraving clean enough that you don't need a cleanup pass. In this case though, I wanted to do a second one, so I'm going to show you that now and you can see exactly how that works. So exactly the same as before, we are going to click start. It's going to bring up this window. I'm not going to tweak anything because we had return to 0 set on the actual rotary settings there, return to starting point. We know that after that first engraving, it has re-rotated itself back around to the starting point. So I can literally click start and it will do exactly the same over the top of it. That bit's very important though. So let's run that right now. There we go, we have a complete wrap and so far it's looking good, but the next thing we want to do is we want to give it a little clean just to make sure it's as pristine as it can be. But I have to say, I mean, I can't wait to show you this properly. It's looking really, really good. So you can see on there at the moment, there is a lot of powder. I mean, initial thoughts though, this is looking really nice. But if I show you my hands, we have got powder on it. So the first thing we want to do is we want to clean that up with something, and the way we would do it is I'm going to be using an IPA spray, a 99% IPA spray. However, you can get lots of different versions, lots of people recommend different stuff. This is just what I've got on hand, so let's give it a clean. So as I said, I've got an isopropyl alcohol here, 99.9%, and I'm just going to literally spray it, going to go a full loop around it, give it a spray, and then with a paper towel, I mean, I'll show you if anything comes up. Look at that, we've just given it a little wipe and it's absolutely cleaning up, which is brilliant. That's what we wanted. I'm going to do a full sweep around it so that we hopefully will have a really nice look at that. I mean, the contrast of that, I hope it does it justice, the camera angle that we're showing you now, but it is so clean. It's done a really, really good job, and I'm very happy with that. And you can see we got it pretty good. That's where the wrap joined up. So I measured it up as you saw, and we put that into there. And actually, yeah, I'm happy with where that's joined. As I said at the beginning, you can see a bit of a messed up area there. That is just where I tried doing something earlier and accidentally messed it up. But that is brilliant. I love that. And there you have it, tumbler process done. So I hope you found this useful today. I've tried to be as concise and clear as possible, but if there are any questions you have, feel free to put a comment down below. I'm always answering questions and I'm always happy to help. And if you have enjoyed the content today and you really enjoy the videos I've been making, consider subscribing to the channel because it really, really helps us grow. And I love showing you guys more techniques like this. So we're going to be doing lots more in the future. Let me know how you get on with it in the comments below as well, and thank you very much for watching. And if you are interested in the laser engraver or the rotary, check out the link below in the description.